Hello everyone, welcome to Taka Translates. Rose Roberts, thank you for joining. こんばんは。ちょっと日本語か英語かどっちがいいか迷ってしまうけどね。皆さんどっちが聞きやすいかな。自分もちろん英語の方に自信ありますが。Let me start just by saying thank you for joining. I hope to continue doing these every week. I hope we can all learn from each other. So I did say we were only going to do the claims today. And so this is the invention we're translating today. But translating the claims just at first glance is always hard. So I was thinking we might just jump to the beginning of the specification, the background art, and just translate a little bit of that first. So we zoom up. Alright, so what are we translating today? So as you can see, it's a wire harness. So relates to wire harness is the second part. The first part is this word here. もういきなり翻訳しますよ。そのための配信なんで、どんどんやってまいります。You may also see some words just pop up. Without me typing all of it in, the word may just pop up. That's the term recognition function in Trados. So if you have any questions about Trados as well, I'm happy to answer them. 自分が言うのはあれだけど、Trados のマスター。自分のことそう思ってるんで、Trados に関する質問あれば、ぜひ聞いてくださいね。So, present invention relates to a. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at this word here. I think we can just go with wire here. We don't need to get fancy with the electric part on top. Now the question is, what does this refer to? So we know this is bend, and we know this is resist. So can we get fancy and put an adjective in front of the wire? Bend or flex? How would you guys go here? Would you put a bend or a flex here? Flex resistant wire. Let's go with that. Flex resistant. Concise. I like it. And our wire harness. There we go. So there's two parts to the invention. That's easy enough. The main part is going to be the wire, obviously. The configuration of the wire will probably be the main part of the invention here. Now I haven't had a good look at this specification beforehand. So if you have, Rose Roberts, if you have looked at this before, you may be able to teach me something while I'm going. Please stop me if I make mistakes. Alright, so as I said, translating the background helps us learn about the invention in that technological field. So I like to do this, especially for translating the claims. So, in recent years, we've got kinnen. And usually here, I like to, even though it might not be constructed in this way, I usually like to use demand. There is an increasing demand. This is like a key word for in the background art. You can usually always change a sentence to fit this pattern. For, now we have our word from up here, the flex resistant wire. Just copy paste that in. And now we have the reason why. Let's put this up here with, let's give us a bit of room because we have to translate this big conjunction of kanji. So it just means the number of parts in a car is increasing. How do we put that in a concise English sentence? That's going to be the tricky part. And I recommend just spelling that out, just what I just said, with the number of parts, components in a vehicle. Let's go more general, in vehicles increasing, and high performance increasing. This sounds a little bit weird. High performance increasing and performance. I don't like how it says high and then increasing. It looks like it should be one or the other here. But I guess we can keep it because this is kind of just one word, high performance increasing. High performance of vehicles. We'll put vehicles here just to make sure we have each part of the sentence logical. If we didn't have vehicle here, it would seem a bit weird. So more natural, add vehicle. One of the questions I often get is, how often can you add words? In patents, adding words is generally not a good thing. But in this case, we're not adding a new word, we're reusing a word. And reusing words for clarity is a very good idea in patents. Parts and high performance of vehicles increasing. There is an increasing demand for flex resistant wires. So nice and general. We're talking about the general state of the technology field here. Nice. All right. Go to the next one here. So it's saying that in the art, there are already some things that have been proposed. So how do we do this? So we go an example of a wire with enhanced, improved and enhanced. Some people don't like improved because it has a special meaning in patents, but in this case would be fine using improved. I just always default to enhanced there. Enhanced, what did we say? Flex resistance. We did use flex, didn't we? Yep. Has been proposed. And that proposed example was? Alright, I'm going to change the structure of this now. We're going to go for wires, been proposed, an example of which is a cable. So we wanted the example to describe the cable here. That's why I moved that around. So now we have our space to describe what the cable is. The cable includes these two plurality of these wires. Now let's just do a check. What is this word? Okay, stranded wires. So stranded wires are just a group of wires here. So the parts of the cable, the components or the elements, are these stranded wires. There's lots of them. And in between the stranded wires, there's this thing. Again, we have a nice group of kanji here to translate. So I'm going to... The Japanese here is not really saying include and comprise. So we can't really go that far to say it. So we couldn't say including stranded wires between which. We kind of don't have the Japanese here. If this was a claim, we might be able to. But instead we're going to go with in which a. Now we have to translate this. Okay, how are we going to translate this? I doubt there's one word to translate this into English. I don't know. I have seen like I don't think you get one word. So we're just going to spell it out. Before I do that, let me check that this word doesn't appear often in the specification. If this word appears often, if it's used throughout the specification, I might need to find a better word. If it's just once in the specification, it's not quite as important. Okay, so this thing only appears 1, 2, and you can see it's only in the background art. So we don't need to be too fancy with our translation. Small diameter interposing member. So I literally just translated out each kanji there. For this, for mono, member is my default go-to. Member can just be anything, so it's a good translation of this. We could hyphenate them, but there's no need to in this case because there's no way that this could be misunderstood. So no need to hyphenate this word. Disposed between adjacent stranded wires. So you can see how I just translated this as disposed because you already have the information up here that it is between two other members. So you don't need to say interpose or anything fancy here. Just use disposed. Alright. So I'm starting to get a general idea of what this invention is about. We haven't actually looked at the invention yet, but already from the background art I see that it's about a wire and it's about these configurations of the wires within the wire. So cables, wires, stranded wires, the hierarchy there, we'll have to look deeper into the specification to figure out, what's a wire in relation to a stranded wire. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Let's zoom down to the claims and start looking at the claims. So just before we do, a quick look at the diagrams. And it is like we said. So you've got wires, which I'm assuming are these tiny little ones are wires. Then you have stranded wires, I'm going to presume, which are just a bunch of stranded wires. Okay, I've got that picture in my head. Let's do the claims. So, Rose Roberts, did you have a look at this beforehand at all? If you did, you might need to start helping me. All right. So we have it's a bit hard to see. How far down does it go? Okay, so yep, the first invention is that flex resistant wire. So let's go with that. You can see that here again. So let's do it. A flex resistant wire. And immediately when you start translating claims, you've got to think in terms of elements, or the building blocks, the parts of the invention. And we can see in this section here, there's lots of parts. There's wires, there's stranded wires, there's other things. And when you get down here, you can see that it's not talking about the parts and their configuration. It's talking about other things, further restrictions. So this tells us that the meat of the invention is right here. So we put comprising. I do wonder how many people put a comma here still. Let me know if you're a comma person or not a comma person. There we go. All right, let's start picking up the pieces. So we want to find the elements, and we've got a wire, and there's a polarity of them, and a big bunch of these wires is formed together as this stranded wire. Then this stranded wire, there's a polarity of them, and they're twisted together to make this even bigger stranded wire. So we've got hierarchy, we've got 3 hierarchies already. The wire, the first stranded wire, and the second stranded wire. So 3 elements, 3 levels. And this bigger stranded wire is our conductor, or this part. This seems to be a equivalent relationship. These seem to be the same things. It's just saying that this is this in the invention. Alright. I think we understand the invention here, the hierarchy. And it's important when you're translating claims to establish that hierarchy in your head. Now, I am going to start as a polarity of wires, and they with I would love to put this as an adjective in front of wires, but this is one thing that is being cracked down on, or more and more people are worrying about this. They worry that if you put this in front of wire, like electric conductive, if you put this in front of the wire, when they appear a second time, they won't have this full name. There will only be wire again in the Japanese. So that's why it's easier to put this kind of information after the element name, after the noun. because then when it appears below, you don't have to have that full name again. You can just have the wire. Alright, so that's our first element. We have the plurality of wires, and they are twisted together to form this. Alright, shugo. I kind of just want to say bundled. What other words are there? Cluster, assembly. Ooh, there's not really a good word there, is there? Might just say a bundle, a bunched, a bundled, a bunched stranded wire. See, what I'm worrying about now is there's these two terms here, and what's the best term for both of them? Fukugo. Fukugo composite, complex, compound. Okay, so for the second one, it looks like complex or compound might be good. And so for this first one, bunched, might be okay. We might come back to that. Formed from. Now this is where it gets tricky because we want to list the elements of the claim like this. Plurality of wires, bunched, stranded wire. But in the Japanese, they aren't listing the elements like this. What's the Japanese? Yoso rekkyo. Washitenai desu. So we have to find a balance between that. So we can't reproduce the Japanese in this form because this isn't how a claim is written in English. We have to try and piece out these elements. But here we have to start getting creative. Stay with me. From twisting the plurality of wires. So here we introduced this new element, the bunched stranded wire, and we described it as being formed from, formed by, I kind of want to go with here because it's followed by the verb, formed by. If it was formed from, a noun would follow afterwards. Formed from the wire. But here we've got twisting, so it's formed by twisting the plurality of wires. Alright, it's looking good. And now we have our third element, the composite stranded wire. Let's stick with this name. The names might not be the best, but it'll work for today. Okay, so this wire is again formed by twisting. Alright, there we go. Now it looks like this is just one. So it's a singular here. And it's formed by twisting the polarity of. Now here it's a polarity, so we have to come back here and say a polarity of. And here's a question of whether to add each or not. So it's a polarity, but each one is formed by twisting. So the question whether to add each or not. If each is not here, then the polarity, this big bunch of wires is formed by twisting a plurality of wires. And that is a little bit unclear. The relationship between the bunch-stranded wires and the wires in this sentence is unclear because you don't know how many wires and how many stranded wires. So to make that clear that it's one wire includes a plurality of wires, to establish that relationship, I think each is important here. Polarity of bunch-stranded wires, each formed by twisting the polarity of wires. Okay, good. I think each is important there. And now we come here, a polarity, sorry, no, that's the singular. Composite stranded wire formed by twisting the polarity of bunched stranded wires. Alright. We don't need to add this suddenly. Suddenly is not important in the claim. Especially when you're translating elements, parts of the invention. This might be important in a method claim, but it's not important and you don't have to add it in. Right, the last part is this section here. So what this is doing is just redefining what this is. It's saying that this composite stranded wire is a conductor portion. How do we put that? We could say a conductor portion corresponding to the composite stranded. Is this one option? I don't think it's right because the meaning of this corresponding to might be understood as an associated relationship. Like, we're not saying it's associated, we're saying it's a one-to-one relationship of the composite stranded wire is a conductor portion. And looking at the picture, let's just check. Numbers. So here we are. So 1's the main invention. 10 is the conductor portion. And we have our bunched stranded wires. And we have our composite stranded wires. So 12 and 10 is the relationship we need to check. 12 and 10. 12 and 10. 12 and 10. So it looks like it is the same, right? We have 10 being this whole thing. I'm just wondering whether the parts between here are included in the conductor portion. Because if the conductor portion includes this polarity of wires and something in between here, we can't say it's a one-to-one relationship. This 10 includes 12 and something in between. I think we just found our answer. If we use include, if we use including the composite stranded wire here, it's now saying that this conductor portion, it basically is the composite stranded wire, but it can have something else in there. And that's what we need to say. We need to say that there is still a possibility that this includes the parts in between. But no, because it's conducting electricity, right? And the part that conducts electricity is the wire. So following on from that, the parts that kind of fill up those gaps probably aren't electricity conducting parts. So it probably is a one-to-one. So in this invention, this wire, it includes a conducting portion, and the conducting portion is this wire. So does that mean we now come back here and say a conductor portion and a where is it? Composite stranded wire so conductor portion the conductor portion the conductor portion including, and so when we do it like this, we've now got the conductor portion as the main part of the wire, and now we have to explain what the conductor portion is. And so we have to kind of do the opposite of what we've done here. We have to put this in. Nope, we need this first. So the conductor portion includes composite stranded wire formed by twisting a polarity of bunch stranded wires. And so the polarity of bunch stranded wires, each formed by twisting a polarity of wires, and the polarity of wires having electrical conductivity. So let's look at this now. So we have the main part of this wire being the conductor portion. The conductor portion includes this and this only, the composite stranded wire. So the composite stranded wire, and in describing the composite stranded wire, we introduce this element, and then we explain this element, and then we explain this element. It's a pretty ugly looking claim, but this is probably the most correct. So we'll leave that there. The other option was to add at the end a conductor portion including the composite stranded wire. This might not be wrong, but adding this as an element separate from all these others, I think that is wrong. I think you just about have to go with this top one up here. The main part of this invention is this. This is this. And this includes these parts. Okay. Oh, we got there. That was kind of tricky actually. Didn't expect to be facing these tricky translations. It's good that we learned something from that. Oh, alrighty. Using brain power tonight. Okay, so now we have the first part of the claim. I'll just leave that there just for reference. We put a where in. And now we have our where in clauses. We have 1, 2, 3 it looks like. So let's start doing these. So where in clauses have a previously introduced element. This is the polarity of bunched stranded wires. So each We might not need each here. If the context allows us to not use each, we might get rid of it. Alright, so, but yeah, each single stranded wire here. So they each contain this wire, and the pitch of this wire is this. Okay. So we're not actually talking about this. We're not adding a restriction to this. We're adding a restriction to the wire that makes up each of these. So the polarity of wires of each one of the polarity of bunched stranded wires. So now we're talking about the polarity of wires that make up one bunched stranded wire. If you look at the picture, so the stranded wire are these ones, the circle of wires and the one in the middle, and this wherein clause is saying that in one of these, let's pick this middle one, the wires here are wrapped at a certain pitch. Pitch just means how far one rotation, the length of like one rotation as you see it winding down the wire. To do a full rotation, how much is that distance? That's what a pitch is. So has the polarity, has the wires have a, now I think I translated a similar invention before because I have this as lay length in my term recognition. Yay! Lucky. So, I mean, pitch, I see pitch all the time, but maybe in this specific technology, lay length is what they use. But twisting pitch, I'm sure, would be fine here. Have a lay length, and we have a range of from, of 10 times a, it's an outer diameter of a twist. But twists don't have outer diameters. So this would be of the wire, the outer dimension of the wire, I want to say. That would make sense. Is this of the wire or of the strand? That's the only question I have. Let's just have a look elsewhere in the claim, see if we can get an answer. Whether this is the twist of the wire or the twist of the strand. Let's see if we can find that answer. If we can't, we might just have to... Okay, this is all the same. So D1, alright, in number 3. So D1 is what we're looking for. And D1 is the outer diameter of a strand. Good, good, good. So, getting back to this. So this outer diameter is D1, and D1 is this diameter of the strand, of the stranded wire. Okay, good, we found that answer quick. So 10 times a strand outer diameter. Now it's a range. We've got a range from this value to this value. So it is the lay length of from 10 times a strand outer diameter, equal, so we have 10 times or greater to 47.2 times. Okay, so we have one value here, this value or greater, to this value. Nice. Comma, and then next. Next wearing clause, we have, this is our composite, I think I called it composite, didn't I? Composite stranded wire, our biggest one. The composite stranded wire. So again, we're talking about the lay length. And the lay length is of the bunched stranded wires. So the lay length of the polarity. So I have to use polarity for this because I've used it up here. You have to keep consistency when you describe something as a polarity. Even though we're talking about just a single instance, not so much a single one, but each one, in a claim, the way that's written can't just change from polarity to singular form. So let's go the polarity of bunched stranded wires of the composite stranded wire each, so we get to focus on one, have a lay length of from, set off our range is from this 5 times a, oh, we saw this in the picture, didn't we? So we look at the picture. This is what we're talking about now. And this is, it's a diameter. Okay, it's not so much a diameter, but it's the length from the center of this guy to the center of this guy. And that is described in Japanese as the layer core diameter. So it's this length here, the layer core diameter. I guess they're saying that this is a circle and it's the diameter. I don't know the thinking behind that. We might just have to translate that as it is. I'm not crazy, right? It's not really a diameter there, right? I mean, I guess it is if you join all the circles. If you join all these centers, you do get a circle, and that's the diameter. So I guess that's the thinking behind it. So let's just do it. 5 times layer core diameter or greater. So we get the ijo. Always make sure it's all greater. 2 for the second part, 30 times now it sounds a bit weird just ending there. This is also referring to this, so actually you could add 30 times the core layer diameter here, the layer core diameter. You could add this here. I don't think you need to. 5 times to 30 times. You've got this information here, so it is implied. Implying things in claims is kind of dangerous. So if you are worried, then definitely just add the layer core diameter again here. That would be perfectly safe, probably the better option there. For today, let's just go with that. Alright, we're on to our last section, the last wherein clause. And we're talking about the little wires, the smallest ones, the ones that make up the bunch-stranded wire. They have this lay length, and it is, so it's just equal to or less than this lay length that we described up here. So the plurality, remember we described these wires as a plurality up here, plurality of wires. So we have to describe it as the plurality of wires down here. I'm just thinking, I guess it's each. It'd have to be each, right? Just thinking, to have a lay length or the pitch, is it weird saying just one wire has this lay length? It is weird because these wires are twisted together. The twisting together gives them that pitch, that lay length. So saying each is actually a mistake. Each wire does get twisted and does have that lay length, but it's only twisted because it is that plurality. Let's try, if we don't put each there, the plurality of wires has a lay length. Then this plurality of wires, this exists in each bunch-stranded wire. So remember, there's a plurality of bunch-stranded wires, and each of those stranded wires has a plurality of wires. So I want to focus on one stranded wire and talk about that plurality. That's what I'm trying to do here. The plurality of wires I guess we've used it up here, but haven't we? And it's been used in the context of one bunch-threaded wire. So from here, this and this are the same. So we are focusing just on one bunch-stranded wire by twisting a polarity of stranded wire. So in each instance that this polarity of wires has been used, we've been talking about a single bunch-stranded wire, each, and then each. So I think it's fine to say each here. Polarity of wires. No, I don't think we need to say each because it's been used for one bunch-stranded wire. So here we don't need to say each because it's already being used in that specific instance of one bunch-stranded wire. Polarity of wires have a lay length equal to or less than. This is equal to or less than, and this came up before, didn't it? This pitch of, yep, so this is referring to this. Then the lay length of the bunched stranded wires. Done. All right, I think we got through it all. How did you feel about that? Are you still with me, Rose? It was actually a lot trickier than it seems. just with the polarities and when you start talking about polarities of polarities, claims can get pretty tricky. The Japanese in particular, they're not consistent with their wording. Up the top, they will say polarity, but when it appears the second time, they don't say polarity in 99% of the time. And so when we translate into English, we need to be consistent and we need to think out these problems of how to word it. So yeah, just a little wire, but quite tricky. I enjoyed it. Yeah, we did it, guys. How are you feeling about it? If there's no questions, might call it a night. Today was kind of a test stream. But I will be doing this every week, and I will be putting out the specification that I will translate a week beforehand. So tomorrow I'll put out the specification that I will translate next week. So if you aren't interested in trying to translate it beforehand, I hope we can study together. Alright, well, thank you for joining me. I shall see you again next week. Bye bye.